The return of the Hunger Games universe. In the past few days, I had the opportunity to see the preview of the new movie of the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. One that brings us back to this interesting dystopia and explains the origins of Snow, the complicated villain we met in the original trilogy. In this video, I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of this new movie, what my impressions were, and whether or not it's really worth watching. So if you would like to know more about this and other movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. First, let's start with the synopsis of this movie. It's the morning of the harvest, which will start the 10th Hunger Games. 18-year-old Coriolanus Snow is preparing for a unique opportunity to achieve glory as a mentor of the games. The once influential House of Snow is going through hard times, and its fate depends on Coriolanus's ability to outdo his peers in wit, strategy, and charm as mentor to the tribute he will be assigned. Everything is stacked against him. They have humiliated him by assigning him to the tribute from District 12. Now, their fates are irretrievably linked. The idea of knowing the origin story of one of the most complicated villains of this universe scared many fans, who did not know if this movie would meet the expectations. First, let's talk about Coriolanus Snow. In the original films, we saw that he was not just a one-directional villain, but that he had a distortion of morals and motivations. In this film, Snow is undoubtedly what stands out the most, as we see his entire development, from being a suffering child to becoming a similar version of the Snow we saw in the films. It is a character transformation that reminded me of Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars, and shows that sometimes a person with good intentions can take a path from which he cannot return. Lucy Gray was also one of the best characters in the film. From the first moment she shows up, she steals every scene, and her motivations are clear from the start. She is a victim of circumstance, but always fights to get ahead. I was very surprised by how much of this character's story involves music. She is constantly singing, something that some people might consider risky, as it often felt like a musical. But it worked too well in the story. Every song of Lucy's had a meaning, and they were details that helped a lot in her story. Obviously, some people won't like this element of the film, but personally, I think it was one of the things I liked the most. Dr. Volumnia Gaul is an evil entity in the story, but she gives us a glimpse of the creative forces behind the Hunger Games. It shows us from whose troubled minds these ideas came from, and how the foundations were created for the games we saw in the other films. Volumnia was one of the characters that stood out the most, and that we will surely see more from in the next movies. It is a highly dangerous character, and will help Snow to achieve his goals. Now, Dean Casca Highbottom was my favorite character in the movie. Although Snow's character has a pretty interesting development, Dean's character was the one I liked the most. He is the person who created the Hunger Games, and carries a great deal of guilt for it. There are several dramatic scenes of his character, which for me were the best parts of the movie, and which I can't go into in depth without sharing spoilers. But in the future on this channel, we will be creating videos solely for his story. Now, this movie wouldn't be called The Hunger Games without the games. How were they? Were they at the level of the other movies? If we compare the Hunger Games of the previous movies with the ones of this movie, we can say that the ones in this movie are quite simple and an old version. Since it is from the first Hunger Games, a time when they are not yet focused on the show and entertainment. These Hunger Games are special because with Snow's help, we start to see what are the foundations of the upcoming competitions. We see how different mechanisms are created, and the evolution of these games. Although we could consider that the Hunger Games was the weakest element of the film, I can say that even so, they kept me on my toes and in expectation of what would happen next. The love story between Snow and Lucy is a cliché or repetitive element, and perhaps the most generic element in the movie. But even so, I think it was a fundamental piece to unite the stories, and although it is a formula that we have seen in other films, in this one it worked quite well, and leaves the audience in expectation of what will happen with the story between these two characters. Now I think this is a good start for a new Hunger Games trilogy. It brings us back to this universe, and in my opinion it is one of my favorites of this franchise. It's a pretty complete movie, that if there were no sequels, it would still work. And it leaves us wanting to know more of this universe. Without a doubt. If you're a fan of the first Hunger Games movies, it's something you shouldn't miss. However, I can't say it's a perfect movie. For as much as it surpasses the original Hunger Games movies in many aspects, it felt deficient in others. Like showing the districts or the other participants of the Hunger Games. Although this movie is called The Hunger Games, I think it would have been more appropriate to call it Snow, because it really is his story. The story of the Hunger Games is a very small aspect of the movie, and this could lead many people to be disappointed if they go in with expectations of just watching the games and the various traps, as they are met with a mostly dramatic movie. This is perhaps the element that I liked the most, in my opinion, as it touches on the philosophy behind the idea of the Hunger Games, what the sport really means to the districts, and the morality behind it. It's a movie that will get you thinking, what is the right side, and what would you have done in Snow's shoes? It is not a film that is focused solely on the action. It explores in depth the rise of the Hunger Games as a form of social control and punishment of the rebellious districts. But the real reason for the Hunger Games is revealed, which will certainly not disappoint fans. We see the moral dilemmas faced by people like Dean Casca Highbottom, creator of the games, but also a victim of the system. The film invites us to reflect on how far one is willing to transgress ethics in order to survive and protect one's own. And obviously we have references to the original movies, but we will talk about this in the future. In my opinion, it's a movie not to be missed. But tell me, what are your thoughts? Are you ready to see the new Hunger Games movie? And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel.